Good evening, everyone. I hope that everyone is having has had a great day. This is Ebony again, and I am coming once again with Friday Night Live. Another week that we have gotten through. God is so good. And I just wanted to come today just to talk about something very practical and something that we oftentimes are found tripped up with. And the title of this live today has to do with removing distractions. And I want to talk about removing distractions because I think oftentimes, we get in a groove in our lives and, we start moving and, building and planning and strategizing and doing things that would help promote us or promote our businesses, or maybe we are just growing in the things of the Lord. And oftentimes things come in our lives to just, and it kind of knocks us off track. For those of you who watch my messages, I talk a lot about endurance and gaining the capacity, to withstand challenges that we all face throughout our journeys. But today I want to talk about something that I believe, is very practical, but it's definitely something that we have to keep in mind. So I'm going to jump right in because I promise you, I'm not going to be here long this evening. I said that last week and I think I was on for about an hour. It was good stuff, but I definitely don't want to be on for an hour today. But let's just get right into the word. So, the word that really came to me today, that I started to really just kind of do a study on. It's a simple scripture, something that we often that we often read and hear, and we are very familiar with. But I'm gonna read it. It's Hebrews 12:1. In the amplified version, and says, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses who by faith have testified to the truth of God's absolute faithfulness, stripping off every unnecessary weight and the sin which so easily and cleverly entangles us. Let us run with endurance and active persistence for the race that is set before us. And I want to focus on the part of the word in Hebrews 12:1 when it talks about stripping off every unnecessary weight and the sin which so easily and cleverly entangles us. Let us run with endurance and active persistence the race that is set before us. So, what I want to talk a little bit about today is weight, okay? So, the first part of that I want to focus on is unnecessary weight. How many of us have unnecessary weight in our lives? It is so important for us to understand that in order for us to truly be successful, in order for us to truly thrive in the season in which we're in now, we have to tend to the things in our lives that serves as distractions and hindrances, preventing us from moving forward. And so I really want you to think about it. Like, I posed a question, and my question is, how many of us have unnecessary weights in our lives? You know, when I think of unnecessary weights, there are so many examples of unnecessary weights. Oftentimes, unnecessary weights could be anxiety. They could be relationships that are not beneficial to us. Weights can be, things that are going on around us that's distracting us, that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with us. A lot of times weights can be an additional burden that's not yours to bear, but yet you carry it. I think that oftentimes weights can also be things that you refuse to move past or let go. It doesn't necessarily have to be sin. We're talking about weights now. And oftentimes, weights has more to do with undue burdens in your life that you have been unable to remove. And so I believe that, stripping off, when it says stripping off every unnecessary weight, it is so important for us to be intentional in this season of our lives, when it comes to stripping ourselves of those unnecessary things. They don't benefit us, they hold us back, and they also impair our vision. Last week we talked a lot about vision, and, that is one of the things, that I feel so strongly about as it relates to allowing unnecessary weights to remain in your life, because they distract you and they oftentimes impair your vision and take you off of focus, which can prevent you from reaching your goal. And so it's important for you to begin to evaluate your life. I believe that we have been in a season where, everything has slowed down for many of us, and it has caused us to get in a place of reflection where we are willing to look at the things in our lives that are working, that are not working, or things that we can do better. And I challenge someone today who might be looking at this, or even if you are watching it on replay, I challenge you to begin to strip the weights from your life that easily entangles you and besets you. Now, let's talk about relationships. How many of us have relationships in our lives right now that are weights? Now, I'm not necessarily talking about marital relationships or, relationships with, young children, because those are things that oftentimes take work, and, all relationships take work. But I'm not, specifically focusing on marriage and children, as much as I want us to begin to identify the people in our lives that are serving as a distraction, or they're motivators or influencers or people who inspire us. I believe that we're in a time right now where if we have more takers around us, we have to begin to evaluate whether or not they should be in our lives. We're talking about unnecessary weights. And there are some, associations that we have that are not beneficial to us, nor does it help us grow or develop. And so it's so important for you to begin to strip yourself of those things. Another thing that I want to challenge somebody with today is I wanted you to begin to think about those unnecessary those unnecessary emotional ties and emotional responses that become weights to you. Sometimes some of us are we are easily irritated. We are easily upset. A lot of things offend us quickly. We are tremendously sensitive, and we let a lot of stuff get under our skin. And consequently, what happens, we're walking around mad and resentful and frustrated. And I would challenge someone today to begin to really monitor those emotional outbursts and those emotional reactions that you typically have to life situations. Some of us need to learn how to develop a thicker skin. Some of us have to learn how to seek peace and pursue it and not be so easily angered and so easily agitated by the things or the people around us. Some of us can be extremely, we can be complainers. We could be people who, everything is negative. Maybe we have more of a pessimistic personality than an optimistic one. And I am challenging that person today to really begin to deal with those emotional, those emotional aspects of us that are not beneficial to us and that serve as weights. We should be seeking joy as children of God, as spirit-filled believers. Our intention should live lives that are filled with joy, and we choose to be happy. It's not something, this great feeling and you just all of a sudden you have it. No, you make a choice to be happy on a daily basis. And so some of us have to begin to change our perspectives and our mindsets and those things that so easily beset us and get us tangled in negative cycles of thinking and behaving. Those are to me can be unnecessary weights that lead to sin. Because oftentimes, if you're angry, if you're upset, and if you're rageful, it will cause you to do things that may not be in the best interest or or anyone else. And so it's so important for us to begin to monitor those things within us. It also talks about and the sin which so easily and cleverly entangles us. And I want you to think about that. What are the things in your life that entangles you, that draws you in? In the therapy, in the therapeutic world, we say, what are your triggers? What are those things that trigger you, right? And so we have to understand ourselves enough to know what things to remove out of our lives. Some of us, we are involved in tasks and activities that have become weights to us. Yet we allow ourselves to remain in that activity or in that particular situation, and we don't change, or we don't maneuver around that so that it could be better for us. Now, in some instances, you can't necessarily change some activities. We got to make a living. We got to keep a roof over our head. So some weights, that may come through the form of work and, employment and business and those kinds of things, we may not be able to strip ourselves from immediately, but you can change yourself in the process. What can you do differently? What boundaries can you set in place that would make your life better in that situation? And I think we talked about that last week, how sometimes, in terms of us transitioning, there are times when it may be time for us to move. And then in some instances, maybe it's not time to move, but it's time for us to change our perspective and our mindset. So that really speaks to what I'm talking about in terms of when you think about those weights and those things that can easily entangle you. I want you to think about what are the things in your life that you can remove and change, and what are those things that you cannot remove, but you can change you in them. A lot of times we also allow the opinion of others to become weights and burdens for us. And so, we often seek the approval and we seek the opinion of man, and that becomes a weight because it prevents us from moving forward, because we are dependent upon what people say or how they think of us, and what their perspective is of what we're doing. That can easily be a weight. It is so important. I could spend all night long talking about those possible weights in your life that can rob you of your ability to move forward and to grow. But I challenge you to begin to look at them and remove them from your life. Remove the people from your life that are not beneficial, that do more harm than do good. Remove yourself from situations that have become burdensome and weighty. If you can remove yourself, remove yourself. Sometimes we stay in situations and we allow ourselves to be burdened out of obligation, and we have to really check ourselves, because sometimes what we say we're obligated to, we're really not. And so it's so important for us to really understand how to lay aside. The Bible talks about stripping off everything. Another version says lay aside the weights and the sins. This version that we're talking about is stripping off those unnecessary weights. And some of us don't know how to do that. And so I am challenging you tonight to really begin to take, inventory of your life, and take inventory of the people and the activities and the things that are in your life. What is causing you or propelling you forward, and what is holding you back? What are the hindrances, the blockages, and the impairments as it relates to your sight and your victory? And we talked about sin. Oftentimes when we are wrapped up in sin, it again impairs our vision and it takes us off of focus. And so it's so important for us to understand that. A lot of times we think, that we attribute it to other things, but no, sin knocks us off of our game. When we are wrapped up in things that we have no business being involved in, it knocks us off of our game. And so it's so important for us to understand that those things in our lives, you shouldn't be involved in it. You shouldn't be entangled in it. You have to begin to exercise discipline and also exercise good decision making, and make the decisions that you need to make to remove those things out of your life. And the sin that besets you. I can't identify that for you, but you can. And so really, this is about us being honest with ourselves. What are those things in our lives that we need to change right now in order for us to be better, in order for us to move forward, in order for us to pursue the purpose and plan and promise of God for our lives? And after it says, stripping off the sin which so easily and cleverly entangles us, then it says, let us run with endurance. There's that word again. There is truly a reward in endurance. I know I say it all the time because it is. We have to get to a place of stick-to-itiveness where we are able to grind and stay positioned until the end. And so it also talks about let us run with endurance and active persistence. We have to be persistent about moving forward, and we have to be persistent about moving the things out of our lives that are weights to us. Some of us are crippled by circumstances and situations that we can change. And so it's so important for us to really gain the courage and the strength we need to walk out of some stuff, or to allow some stuff to exit our lives, or to simply stop doing some things, because they have become weights and they have become burdens. And guess what? It hinders you from moving forward. So there should be, when we are running with endurance, there shall be an active persistence for the race that is set before us. Now, here's the great thing about the race that's set before us. My race is not your race. Look, we have unique paths and assignments. And although they may be similar, because we are uniquely designed by our Creator, our individual races are different. So I can't tell you what's best for you. You can't tell me what's best for me. But what we can do is examine our lives and really look at the areas in our lives where change needs to occur. And then we need to change them. Think about it. Some of us have had some things in our lives that we have not changed, and we have been talking about them for years, but yet we have not changed them. And they have become weights and burdens in our lives. And maybe it hasn't paralyzed us, but it has hindered us from truly moving forward into the things that God has for us. And so if that is you, I challenge you today to really do a self-reflection and really begin to strategize how to strip yourself of those things that have become weights. Because here's the thing, when we don't strip ourselves, we have to be accountable to ourselves. And it no longer becomes, it's no longer an issue about anyone else. It's really about you. Because you have to be willing to change. And so the important thing for us in this is that this scripture has a lot to do with accountability. It has a lot to do with our willingness to be honest with ourselves. What are the weights in our lives? What are the distractions in our lives? What are the sins in our lives that prevents us from moving forward? And some of us may say, well, I really don't have any sin, or I really don't have any weights. Well, listen, it's the little foxes sometimes. And you have to really begin to examine your life and think about, where I am, can I be further? And if I can, how can I be further? What do I have to move around? What is it that I have to focus on? Some of us have to begin to prioritize our lives and make ourselves first in some aspects. And I'm not talking about, I'm saying first. After God, you have to make yourself first and begin to seek after the things that God has ordained just for you. And you can't not seek the things of God, or you can't desire more, but yet allow yourself to be entangled with things that you can easily strip yourself from. Now, earlier I made it very clear when I said that there are some things that are not that easy to strip away from. And so you have to develop a plan and a strategy in order for you to do that. And so it's important for me to clarify that, because there are some things you just can't walk away from tomorrow. There's a lot to lose with that. But you have to have the intention in mind to prioritize your life so that it is better. And I think that we're in a season now where many of us are looking for ways to make our lives more simpler so that it frees us up to do the things that we desire to do, to pursue our dreams and to pursue our goals. Think about it. When we are weighted down with a whole lot of stuff, we don't have a lot of energy to really pursue our dreams and goals. We don't have a lot of energy, to spend time building and planning and strategizing. Because when you have weights, right? When you have those weights and those burdens on you that oftentimes men and you have placed on you, it takes away from your mental energy. It takes away from your physical strength. It meddles with your mental health. And oftentimes, not only does it deplete you of your energy, but it also has the ability to form conditions in your body as a result of the stress and the weights and the burdens that you've carried. One of the things that has increased, and I don't know about a lot of other therapists, but one of the things that has, or I would say one of the scenarios that have increased in my practice, is this whole idea of somatic symptoms. And, somatic symptoms is simply, mental and emotional stress, right? Turning into some form of ailment in your body. And I work with many people who have developed severe ailments as it relates to joint pains and stomach, sometimes, dealing with the stomach issues and the headaches and all of those things. And there is no diagnosable condition to attribute to these symptoms. And so what happens is a lot of times it's the stress, it's the worry, it's the burdens, it's the anxiety that really turns into these somatic symptoms. And that's what happens. And so again, we're talking about stripping ourselves of the unnecessary weights and sin that so easily entangles us. And it's important for us to do that. I always say that, the Bible talks about how we are three-part beings. We are mind, body, and spirit. And there has to be a balance in all three parts of us. That's the way God made us. And so what happens is when there's so much stress, right, in our minds, then it trickles into our bodies, and it takes the form of medical symptoms and conditions that parallel real diagnosable conditions. But test after test after test oftentimes determines that they don't have a diagnosable condition other than the stress and the anxiety and the worry, the weights that they've been carrying. And so I wanted to take a little time just to talk about that tonight because it's so important. Don't allow the weights and the burdens to rob you of your mobility and to rob you of your season of success. I will continue to say that this is a birthing season for many of us. And although we all may be birthing something different, one thing is very similar in the birthing process is that there are distractions and hindrances and things that has the ability to take us off of focus. And so I just want to challenge someone today Do a self-examination. Look at your life. What are the things in your life that you can remove, that you can strip off so that the weight and the burden is gone? Is it realistic to say we'll never have any worries? Absolutely not. But according to what this word says, when it talks about unnecessary weight, a lot of us have unnecessary weights in our lives. And I am challenging you to really remove them. And I've talked about the unnecessary emotional baggage that we often carry. Stop being mad all the time. Stop complaining. Stop being petty. Sometimes we complain a lot, and we're never, there are times when we find ourselves not satisfied, and all of these things, they become like weights, and it's emotional baggage that we carry that weighs us down, and it robs us of our joy. The Bible talks about how he gives us a garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. So there has to be a level of gratitude in our environments in order for us to truly begin to remove those weights from our lives. And so one thing is really creating an environment of gratitude. And choosing, and I've talked about this before, another way to remove the weights and strip off that emotional baggage that we oftentimes carry. Stop looking at all of the negative things that's going wrong, and start looking at the things that's going right. Start looking at the positive aspects of your life. The people that you are in relationship with, look at their strengths and don't spend so much time looking at their weaknesses. And this is really something that oftentimes happens a lot in our marriages and with our children. We have to begin to train ourselves to not look for the negative or look for those things that we know is going to be difficult for us to handle. And we have to learn how to build on strengths. There is a term in the clinical world, and it talks about strength-based. And really, the whole aspect of strength-based has to do with finding the great things about a person and then building on that. And this is oftentimes important when there are so many barriers and there's so many challenges in the lives of people. And so when we are assessing, and I'm talking about in the clinical world, so when we are assessing and we are determining, what their treatment plans would be and what level of intervention and service we need to provide, right? It's easy to look at the negative. But in the clinical world, we have been trained to truly be strength-based and look at first, what is that family doing well? What are the great things or the great qualities about that person? And so I'm going back to what I'm talking about, and what I'm saying is be more strength-based. That will help begin to remove the weights that oftentimes, bog us down because we're thinking about what can go wrong and what other people are doing. But allow yourself to look at the good more than you look at the bad. I'm not telling you to ignore the bad, but what I'm saying is, are you focusing on it? Are you so critical of others that you don't see the good? Because these are weights as well. These are weights. Some of us are involved in stuff that we need to stop. Our season is up. You gotta move forward. And there are some of us that are in situations where it's not that you have to move forward, but you got to change. You got to change your perspective. You got to get some new, you got to get some renewed strength and get some new ideas and go through a process of cleansing so that you can be better in the situation. We're talking about removing unnecessary weights and the sin which so easily and cleverly entangles us. And I like that word cleverly because oftentimes it sneaks up on us and we don't always know where it's coming from. But when you are involved in things that you should not be involved in, when you are consumed with sin, it impairs your vision, it causes you to lose focus, and it robs you of your ability, to really grow. And so it's important for us to really be persistent with these things. It not only does it say, endure, but it also says an active persistence. The race is set before you. So you want to endure and you want to persist in the race that is before you. I hope that this was something that was helpful to someone. My desire is to encourage the people of God to continue in God and to continue to move forward into the things of God. Begin to look at your life. Do a self-assessment. Do a self-reflection. Begin to look at those things that are unnecessary and that are burdensome to you. And I want you to begin the process of stripping them from you so that your life can be freed up to do the things that God has called you to do. That can be relationships, that could be activities. It can also be emotional baggage that you just need to let go. Maybe you need to forgive. Maybe you need to, become more grateful, create an environment of gratitude. Maybe you need to be more strength-based where you are looking at the good and the positive as opposed to looking at the negative. These are all things that you can do that, to begin to create an environment where you experience more joy and the weights are being removed from your life. This is Ebony Vaughn, Triple G Living, God Goes and Grind, Life on Purpose. Have an amazing weekend. God bless you.